her welcome. Testing. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be here. But before I begin, to you in the tongue of Sacagawea and her people. Nanawane, Daivo Heinschnet. Nimanzanishnga sikpa mibidimbidik. Usisiwa akrama nahwa indegwar. Aka beshdamanaha paramananga sumbarakada. Ek dama anno Heinschnet. Ek taman zutsugopana, ek taman daivo hanchna, direpana, ususuwai, taman nahwa giman. Sukasakacha, we are naraguyap, unaha paramandu ahoida. Suwai, we haramanana sumbarkanda. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be here. I'm very proud and honored to have the blood of a very famous young Native American woman. I'm so honored that I've been traveling extensively throughout the United States. I had the opportunity to have an audience with President Clinton. I had an opportunity to speak at the Smithsonian, and many, many opportunities because my ancestor exemplified for me what road I should seek. Among the Native American people, we all believe in the red road of life. All of us have a red road. Even our white relatives here, you have a red road. All of us have a road in this life. And it is the road of this young woman that came about with the Lewis and Clark expedition, that they wrote about her, that they told about her. And it is through her that we, the Lemhi Shoshone, the Agaidika people, are known about today, through that young woman. You know, first thing I want to share with you, the Shoshone people historically encompassed a large part of the United States. We were a large nation, and if you can imagine Europe. Europe is a European nation, right? And what kind of tribes would we find in Europe? English, Italian, Norwegian, all different kinds of tribes, right? That we would find over there in the European nation. Well, the Shoshones were a great big nation historically, and they're also composed of many tribes. You have the Tukidika, you have the Agaidika, you have the Penguidika, you have the Sihuoki, you have the Yambaidika. And if you notice, we're all identified with the Dika. Dika is what we are identified by the primary food sources in the area that we lived in. And Sacagawea's people came from the Agaidika. Can everyone try that? Agaidika. Let's try that again. Agaidika. So when you see a historian and they say to you, where does Sacagawea come from? And you'll impress them by saying, Agaidika. She was part of the salmon eater people. She was a salmon eater, one of the only Shoshonean tribes primarily identified with eating the salmon. The salmon came the furthest inland into her people's land. And it is by the life of the salmon that we symbolize our life. Our life begins in a cradle board, much like this one. Every tribe has a cradle board, every tribe. And these cradle boards are not just cradle boards. They're just not a carrying device. They're not a car seat. They're very spiritual. Very, very spiritual. Sacagawea was taught from the time that she was a little girl about her Indian culture. In fact, her culture, when she was born in 1788, she was taught her lesson. She was born in Salmon River country. And one of the first lessons she was taught was to be very quiet. She was in a cradle board, just like this one here. This is an Agaidika cradle board. This is our car seat. This is our carrier. This is our spiritual holder for our babies. It's very ceremonial. You'll see here the buckskin. She was taught to appreciate and respect the four-leggeds. The plants, she was taught to appreciate the plant life. The hoop was to always look heavenward and look up to the heavens. And so in this way of life, her lesson began in the cradle board. She also learned many things about her environment. Native American people were very, very aware of their environment. In fact, most of us are cradle board babies. Everyone in here, if you were a cradle board baby, raise your hand. Were you a cradle board baby? I was a cradle board baby. And when we're cradle board babies, we were taught to be very aware of our environment. Do you know that many times we'll look down because we know a lot about you just by watching you? And so this is part of our environmental teaching. Everything that we learned began from a time of our life. Our first lesson that we were taught in life, sir, we were taught to be very quiet. Why do you think children were taught to be very quiet? Why do you think? The enemy. Yes, we had enemies. The Lemhi Shoshone people, the Agaidika, obtained horses from their Comanche brothers and sisters. Did you know that the Comanches are Shoshones? They're Shoshones. But they're a different kind of Shoshone than we are. Each Shoshonean group was very distinct from the other. Just like when you go to Europe, the Italians were very different from the Spanish, right? So the Shoshones were very different, and they were influenced by their environment. Sacagawea's people had their own leaders. They had their own heroes. They had their own Naraguiap. They had their own stories about the land. On August 17, 2004, we're inviting you to Salmon. I meant 2005, sorry, August 17, 2005. I get those senior moments. But we want to invite you there. But there is a hot springs up on the hill where many people swim. And you know that hot springs there? You know who it belongs to? It belongs to Tso'avich. Tso'avich. Do you think we would go swim there? Could you tell them what Tso'avich means?
Something that guards the springs.
A monster. Yeah. So she knew all about these places. All about these places. But what I wanted to share with you is that they were very distinct. We even have our own dialect. Do you know that the Shoshone Bannocks down in Fort Hall, do you know what they call the beaver head? They call it Bojinambihu. You know what that means? Buffalo heart. They called it buffalo heart. And if you drove down to the Shoshone and Bannock tribes, it would only take 3 hours in today's driving time to drive down there. And do you know how they say the common words such as scissors? They say dizika. You know what the Lemhi Shoshones say? We say kuwazugi. Do they sound the same? No. We had a different Native American epistemology. We had a different way. We were more like the Plateau tribes, the Nez Perce, the Flathead tribes. We had alliances with different tribes. We had alliances with the Crows. We had alliances with the Flathead. We even had alliances with the Crees. The Crees, we called them Anno, and I'm honored to be here in Anno land with all of you. In fact, the Crees dance the same form of Sundance we do because we shared. The Crows dance the same form of Sundance we do. We shared. We had alliances with certain tribes. But there were certain tribes we didn't get along with. We got the horses, and that made us strong. And we rode out all over the plains. And we chased the Blackfeet back up into Canada. And we joke around and we chase those other Crees up into Canada. And we joke around, we chased all the tribes into North and South Dakota. And so that didn't make us very well liked by other tribes. But the horses gave us the ability to travel. and we traveled far. In fact, there was a historian. His name was Chevalier de la Fendrai. Fancy name. And he came in 1738 up into the northern part of the United States and Canada. And he said he wrote about the Snake Indians. And he said that they were very formidable. And he said they didn't hesitate to fight despite the season, despite the time of day. So they were very much feared by their enemy tribes. And so this is one of the reasons, the first lesson that we taught Sacagawea, and we were taught by our people, sir, if you don't mind, was if the baby cried, its nose was pinched. Oh, did you hear him? His nose got pinched. And so that was the first thing. Why do you think we didn't want the baby to cry? You said the enemies, right? Wild animals, grizzlies. A grizzly could rip apart a teepee in no time. And that's the way it was. That was the way of life. But we had tribes that were our fearsome enemies. We had the Blackfeet, the Bucky. We had all the tribes of North Dakota. You know, I accused Kroeber of being genericizing Native American people, putting them into cultural regions. You know how he said, you're the Plains Indian, you're the Plateau Indian. Well, Shoshones did the same thing. We primarily genericized those tribes and called them Bambizimina. That means those that would cut off your head and put it on a pole. So we would tell our kids, shh, Bambizimina. And so we would teach our children from the time that they were little. But the most important point that I would like to make is that when Sacagawea was 3 years old, she was given a name. Could you send Malia up here, please? Malia received her name last year. She was 3 years of age. Malia Kimaik. Malia is one of our youngest Lemhi Shoshones, a familial lateral descendant of Sacagawea. She was given her name last year. Among the Lemhi Shoshone people, we give names to our children when they're 3 years of age. And the name that she was given is Bishanot. And one of the most important things that we do during that ceremony is we also pierce their ears. And if you will notice her beautiful earrings. One of the things that I would like to share with you is that we teach our children about their culture when they're very young. If you will notice, I have a cradle board here. I put my children and my grandchildren in this cradle board. But I want to share something of Malia's. Yeah. This is Malia's. And so in this way, we teach the culture to our children. She learns to appreciate the cradle board and the cultural significance of the cradle board at a very young age. So let's give her a big round of applause for coming up and being brave. When Sacagawea was 3 years of age, she was given a name. She was given a name. Sir, I'm going to need you to come here. Could you bring your hat with you? Okay. Put your hat down here and sit right there. Sit right over there. Okay, Lucille, I want to share with you how she received her name. Now, among our people, we receive our name at 3 years of age. We get our ears pierced. Now, I told you we were more like the Plateau Indians, and that was the significance of Sacagawea's people. We were very much like the Plateau. This is considered our gold and our money. So we like all the bling bling. Okay. So at this time, I'm going to share with you a little bit about our language. Sacagawea's name traditionally is Sacagawea. Let's try that. Sacagawea. Everybody try it. Sacagawea. Again, Sacagawea. And what does that sound like? It sounds like Sacagawea, right? And it is. Okay, I'm going to share with you something about the language. Okay, Lucille, you're going to help me with this. This is this man's hat, right? Okay, now listen to our language. I asked her, whose hat is that? And she pointed to him. Okay, now let's pretend like he's a little child. Yeah. And among Native American people, we're just like any other race. We're like any other race. You can say, okay? In Indian language, you can still use words of endearment. So if you could have heard her with the mic, I asked her, whose hat is this? And she goes, Saka hat. Did you hear me? Saka hat. Because he's an adult. Now I said to her, whose little hat is this? And she goes, it's his little hat. So she uses a term. She would say, Sakacha hat. Well, Sacagawea had a wea. This is a little girl's wea. Malia, Kimaik. This is a little girl's wea. The mother's wea is much bigger. And this is a burden basket. Come here, Malia. The burden basket was used to carry our willows. Willows to make our cradle boards, willows to make many of our things. And it was generally carried in a variety of ways. It was carried across the shoulder, across the back. And it was carried by the children. And again, we taught our children from a very young age their duties within our people. And that is called a wea. So it was in the same way when we're naming our children, we name them at such a young age that the words have endearment. And so this is Sacagawea's wea. So in this way, when somebody was asked, whose wea is that? Instead of saying Sacagawea, they would say Sacagawea. This belonged to Sacagawea. So if that basket was sitting there and I said to her, Sacagawea, she would say Sacagawea. She would point to her, Sacagawea. That is her burden. That is Sacagawea's name. That is her burden. And in our culture, the language is prophetic. They say our name comes back and serves us again and again. Do you believe that Sacagawea carried many burdens in her life? Yes, she did. Sacagawea. It means that is her burden. This is a burden basket. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my point is, her name that was given to her is Sacagawea. It was a name, when my little granddaughter was given her name, we had a feast, we had a dinner, we had an enjoying time with her. It was a time of great joy, just like my ancestor when she was given her name, Sacagawea. That is her name. Now, I'm going to go one step further. Many of you have heard of her captivity. And I'm going to get a captive here. Sir, could you come here? Emmylou, could you please come up front? Sir, could you come here? Yes. Okay. This is my captive. Indian people captured other tribes. We captured other tribes for the purpose of economics. Now, I could probably trade you off to that Indian woman down in Nevada that makes good hide. That older one, that big one. Yes. And I could make me a good trade. Now, the Lemhis weren't liked by other tribes because at that time, we would attack tribes on our horses. So I'm going to show you how Sacagawea's name changed. Okay, you're my captive. Okay, I captured him out by the Great Falls. Okay. Danasito. Danasito. Okay. Now, before I begin, I want you to understand that every tribe has a different way of speaking. There's so much, I'm trying to squeeze everything in, but this is what I want to share with you before we move to him. Okay. In Cree country, right here, their greeting word for saying hello is?
Hello.
Hey, okay, so he does it. It's tansi, right? Tansi? Okay. Tansi. Let everybody try that. Tansi. Okay. You go to the Seminole tribe, they have their own greeting. You go to the Ute tribe, they say Maikwas. You go to the Cherokee tribe, they say OCO. You go to the Crow tribe. Let's try the hello word in the Crow tribe. Shodaji, bilabaji. Okay. Did any of them sound the same? No. So when we talk to people, we used our hands. And I'm going to teach you guys a sign language at this time, and I'd like to teach you how to say, what is your name? Let's try this, okay? Point, shake your hand, and bring your hand sharply across your forehead. Okay, here we go. What is your name? Okay, let's do it again. What is your name? Okay, here's my captive. Okay, you saw the sign language, right? Okay. Okay, my captive, right? And Hagayani had. Hagayani nani had?
Brian.
Brian Hagat. Brian Hagat. Brian.
Lenhart.
Brian Dunhar. Dunhar. Brian Dunhar.
Brian Dunhart.
Dunup. 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 Okay. Dunup. Dunup. Dunup? Okay. Thank you. Do you think Sacagawea would have argued with an enemy tribe that would give her a name? You know what we called him? You know what we called him? We called him Kneecaps. His name is Kneecaps. We'll find out later how that serves you prophetically. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. These were supposed to be my mean warriors. Okay, thank you. Okay, what I wanted to share with you is that tribes did, when they captured someone, they did change their names. And we changed the names of our captives. If your name was Wachinchala, we would probably change it, and if we couldn't say it, we'd just call you Sioux Woman. We would call you Old Crow Man. We'd call you Old Ojibwe Man. And that's the way our people did. Today, we even still distort your name. If your name was Zeke, we would call you Zigish. If your name was Sally, we would call you Sari. So we distort your name. And it was in this way that my ancestor went among a tribe, and her name was changed. And she was probably very frightened when she was captured. There's nothing more that irks me to no end when I find in books and in speeches saying that she was happy to be in a village that fed her plenty of food. I don't know of a child who'd want to be taken from their home. I don't know of a child that'd want to be taken from their home. Her mother was killed. Her family was killed when she was taken. How could she find joy in that? And I believe firmly, and our people believe in our history, that her name was distorted from Sacagawea to, what's that other word? Sacagawea? Yeah, something like that. I don't know, some kind of Sacagawea or something, yeah. Now you think about it, ladies and gentlemen. You have Elizabeth Smart. Do you remember her? You remember she was taken from her family. Her captors called her Augustine, and her family called her Elizabeth. And the name Elizabeth was probably given to her in a good way, in a loving way, by a loving family. But by her captors, she was called Augustine. How do you think it makes her family feel if you walked up and you said, "How is Augustine doing?" Would you hurt their feelings? Ladies and gentlemen, we feel the same way. Are you going to call her by the G word? Or are you going to call her by her given name, Sacagawea? Let me hear from you. What are you going to call her? Yes. And when you go out there and some historian comes up to you and says, her name is Sacagawea or whatever they say, you're going to say, no, it's not. It's Sacagawea. And you know where I heard it? From her great, great, great grandniece. That's her name. That's her nanny. I went to a gathering down there in southeastern Oregon. I went down there. And there was a stage there. And I told them people, I says, when you come to honor her son, Pom, I says, do not call her, oh, that G word, anyway. The G word, right? Don't call, I said, don't call her that. But there was a scholar who flew in. He was a Lewis and Clark scholar. And he comes up to the stage and proceeds to share his great wisdom with us. And he said, I'd like to tell you the history of Sacagawea or whatever that is. And you know what happened? The whole podium blew over. Everything on the stage blew down. And I told him, I told you not to call her that. And you know who else did not call her by that name? Who strengthened the fact that her name was said with a J? Do you know who else said that? Clark. Clark, in his last account that historians use as the accurate date of her death, he wrote her name with a J. When President Clinton, we were given, she was made an honorary sergeant, it was spelled with a J. And when her people saw her, it was very highly likely that when they saw her, they went, Sacagawea, Sacagawea. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if I can carry one message to you, she gave much in this country. She gave much of her life. Give her the joy of her traditional given name that was given to her by her loving family and her people, Sacagawea. I'm going to turn the time over to Lucille and Emma. Lucille is an elder from our tribe, and she's going to say a few words. And here's your Disney wine back.
Are you going to hold it or do I hold it? Okay. Oh, my name is Lucille Pohype Eldridge, and my people are from the Agadikat tribe, and my ancestors are all born there. My great-great-grandfather, great-great-grandmother, my father, and I come from them descendants of Sacagawea, from Salmon. And here I have pictures here that I have to show to the people here, and pictures of my great grandfather, born in Salmon, and that's where my grandfathers come from. This great grandfather, and here's here's my great grandmother, his wife, my great grandmother. And then here's okay, and here is one of their sons, my grandfather, my father's father, and they were all born in Salmon, Agadika. And this is my father, son of that, my grandfather. And this is my mother here, come from Boise Valley side on that one. And this is my grandmother from Boise Valley that was removed from Boise Valley. And my mother comes from that. And the picture's stuck together. Oh, here it is. And this one here is the way the Agadika cowboys looked like at the time when they lived in Salmon. They had cattle and they had horses. When they were removed, they left everything in Salmon. They didn't take it with them. When they went and moved to Fort Howell, they didn't have nothing. So, and this is my grandmother here that was removed from Salmon. I mean from Boise Valley. She was born in 1867. That was in the 1800s. My great-grandfather's from Salmon. And then here's my father when he went to the boarding school, when they were taken away from their parents to go to school in the boarding school in Fort Hall. All the children were taken from their homes to go to a boarding school. And that's where he met my mother, and that's where they got married, and that's where I come from. And this is the old elder. He's from Salmon too. And can you read that? Can you?
This is her ancestor, Andrew Honina. This is her ancestor who came from the Lemhi Valley. And what she's sharing with you, ladies and gentlemen, is treasures in her life. And Sacagawea's people lived in the Lemhi Valley. And the legacy or the impacts of the Lewis and Clark expedition was that our people were forcibly removed from the valley in 1907. In 1907, her family left and was forcibly removed to Fort Hall. But there were some of us who fled back and lived in Salmon. It was our beloved homeland. And this is what she wanted to share with you as an elder, is her treasures and her history of where she came from. Thank you. Okay, Emma's going to come up and conclude for us.
I hope you don't mind. I've got a few notes here just to keep me on track. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here amongst you people, especially the Ano. We call them the Crees, we call them Ano, as my sister had said before, to be here in this country. And my name is Emma George Naagaidika. I'm a salmon eater. I was born and raised in the Salmon River country, the birthplace of Sacagawea, homeland where she was raised. And as my sister Roseanne had stated, prior to that, they were living in the area and they were traveling. They were a migratory peoples, and they traveled throughout the area. The Shoshone Nation, as a larger group, extend. We're the most northern Shoshonean tribe down to California. And so it is a great nation, and within that nation there are nations that are more distinct and unique. And we are one of the Shoshonean nations. One of our oldest names amongst the Shoshone people was called Wihinai. That means from the knife, the arrowheads. And then there were different colors of Wihinai. Enga Wihi, Oha Wihi, Dosa Wihi, Asian Beat Wihi. Gray knife, white knife, yellow knife, red knife. And there was our Comanche brothers. They were called Duwihi. And they still are called that today. We're called the Asian Wihi, Asian Beat Wihi, Asian Wheat. And Sacagawea's people, when she was a young girl, she was taught about her cultural life ways. She was taught how to do things. She spoke her language. She learned about Tamambiasogop, our Mother Earth. She was taught about the natural life cycle, about natural law and the seasons and how to live and survive. And from that time, when she was 12 years old, she was well schooled. She was knowledgeable about geology, herbs, foods, different, botany, different things, medicinal things. For example, when they said that Sacagawea had almost died when she was up here by Great Falls, and Lewis and Clark had said that they had given her some, we call it abihibit, it's her medicine, and they had given it to her. And when they given it to her, she had overcome her sickness. But in there was no mention of Sacagawea advising Lewis and Clark to prepare this medicine so to make her better. But when we looked at that, we said that okay, we understand. Another thing is the documentations in the Lewis and Clark Journal. Most of the language, the Shoshone words that you read in there are the Indian words are mainly Shoshone. I mean, Agaidika. As earlier my sister said, honey and bump, that means beaver head. That's an example for one. Agaidika, we're Agaidika, salmon eaters. And so those are some of the things that in her short life, this young woman has touched our lives, and she continues to touch it today. 200 years later, in 1805, she had returned to her homeland 200 years ago, and today we're celebrating that in Salmon, Idaho this coming year. But in our Indian ways, we're taught, we believe there's universal teachings amongst Indian people, and there's teachings amongst the Indian tribes. But we believe that we are the oldest upon the North American continent, the American Indian people. And we believe that because of our values and our teachings, as many nations rise up and fall, we've been able to be where we are at today and continue to live and make our life upon Mother Earth because of those teachings. In reality, we should have been annihilated, wiped off the face of this earth, but that did not happen. And going back to our original teachings, Creator, we believe, gave us teachings. He gave each different groups of people original teachings about life, about how to live their life. And he gave the Indian people teachings. And one of the first teachings that we believe is one of our first values, our beliefs, is Creator. That's number one in our lives. And like when we get up in the morning, we thank Creator for life, just living life. And when we walk up on Mother Earth, those are original teachings. And through those values, we're able to live. I just want to quickly share some things. Because of those original teachings, we're able to live. And then Mother Earth Mother Earth is our mother. Each and every one of us here today, we walked here. We believe that as each of us live, we make our lives upon Mother Earth. When we come into this world, we put our feet up on her and we walk. But none of us walk the same path. And that's like the Sundance Road. None of us will ever walk the same path. I have sisters here. You may have a companion. You don't walk the same road. Each of us, when we come here, when we leave here, we only cross paths. And in that way, we walk upon our Mother Earth. And that's our road of life. And she feeds us and she clothes us. One time, this old man, he said, everything we need is here. The water, the food, wood, fire, all the natural elements. And then he went into more depth. He said, the wood makes buildings, the wood makes pencils, the wood makes paper. It's a simplified concept, but it's very complex. And so I just want to share those things with you. And why do you ask? Why is she telling us about this? What does this have to do with Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea? Okay, well, I'm going to take you back. When Lewis and Clark signed the letter to come here and they spoke with Thomas Jefferson, they agreed to come on this exploration or expedition. And Thomas Jefferson had said, it's going to take 1,000 years for us to build our country where we are today. And it's only been 200 years. And when Lewis and Clark came through here, through the Indian country, he said, this is the most beautiful land. I feel like I'm in paradise. It is so beautiful. And they stood in awe of this country. And there's a place up in the Salmon River country. And this place is where the waters divide, from where you can step over the Missouri River 1 foot. You can step on this side and the water flows the other way. That goes to the Columbia River and to the Pacific Ocean. And the water from this way goes into the Gulf of Mexico and it runs into the Mississippi River. Just from this tiny little bit of water coming out. And my hopes are that what is going to befall the future generations of our people. 200 years ago, here we are today. What are we going to do for our children that are here? And I would like to share a poem with you that I wrote. So I think it's important because we have Indian people, they have 2 books of knowledge. One book's the white man's knowledge. The other book's the Indian knowledge, and it's really not written. And so, in some ways, I feel we are more worldly, and we speak more languages. In that sense, we have more understanding. And I think that's ultimately what it is, to have more understanding. Why close yourselves off? I don't understand why people close themselves off from each other. Because, again, our values are important to us as who we are as Native people. When Columbus came, he said that the Indian people were childlike because they were loving and because they were giving. See, that's one of our Indian teachings. We call it giveaway, and that everyone is our brothers and sisters and that you help each other out. But in today's world, it's not like that. You can look around and people will turn from their brother or their sister. And so I think, how are we going to determine the future for our younger generations? What do we want this world to be like? We have to consider all those things. And in closing, I would like to share a poem with you. It says, teach them the truth about the first Americans. Let them learn the rich history and culture of their forefathers, for it is good. One of the first teachings amongst Native people is to have respect, beginning with oneself. Let them learn and let them grow without fear and doubt of their own worth. And this is my prayer for our future generations, with understanding for our brothers and our sisters, for we are the children of our father and our mother. And I would like to share that with my white brothers and sisters today that come here. And I'm just grateful, and I'm thankful, for the blessings. And I would like to invite you all to Salmon, Idaho, August 17th, 2005, beginning at 4 o'clock. There's going to be a special honoring for Sacagawea. Our people haven't done that. Our Agaidika people. In 1907, we were forcibly removed from our homeland. And so at this time, we're going to have the opportunity to come back, and we're going to honor her in what we call a mahigoi. And this is a special honoring where she is going to be honored. This is for people that have been captured or returned from war. And so at that time, we're going to have this mahigoi, and we'd like to all invite you to come if you are able this one day. And I would just like to end it there, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn the mic back over to you, but I do want to say this one thing, and this is the point. The Lewis and Clark expedition was through divine intervention. And we want to thank this expedition 200 years ago happened not just for any purpose. It happened to give us a voice here. And this 100 years, Native American voices are being heard. So we'd like to thank you, and we wanted to come up and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming and sharing the story of Sacagawea with us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank the Limhi Shoshone again for coming and presenting.